the GHU webinar series. It's another exciting day. We have a nice program. Today we are going to focus more on interactions with
This
the
meeting is
expert
being
panel.
recorded.
I will start the session with a brief introduction and explain the program of the day, and then we will proceed. Let me share my screen. I hope you can see the screen. Okay, so we had an exciting week starting from Monday. This week we started with a global plenary, followed by a session on Asia, Latin America, and Africa, highlighting the specific phytosanitary challenges and how the CG centers operating in respective continents are using various procedures to ensure safe navigation of germplasm from CG to the partners, and likewise from partners to CG centers. And today is the final day. Here we again come to the global session, and this is a concluding session. Um, just as a quick recap, we started with the global plenaries with the 3 external speakers. Dr. Zia from Directorate of Plant Production and Production of FAO, Dr. Adi Freeman from the regional program of FAO based in Africa, and Dr. Charlotte Lusty, who is the head of Gene Bank platform at Global Crop Diversity Trust in Bonn. They have given fantastic opening talks. If I had to pick one message from each of it, it's going to be this. From Dr. Zia's presentation on delivering the International Day of Plant Health, the key message is the plant health is fundamental to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. There is no need to go into too many details, but this statement is very emphatic and clearly specifies the importance of plant health in achieving zero hunger, conserving biodiversity, mitigating climate change, and almost every other aspect, because everything is linked with food. And from Dr. Adi Freeman, the key message that I would pick is the impact of transboundary pests and disease is particularly high in Africa, because the continent has experienced unprecedented epidemics caused by introduced pests during the last 1 decade. And there is this a living example. What happens if the pest is introduced and if there are no controls, how it can destroy food production as well as biodiversity. And he called for a unified action of plant health centers working on plant health. It is not a fragmented approach, but a unified approach. And it requires altogether new way of doing business in the continent. And then the message from our own program leader is very clear. GHUs, the germplasm health units, are vital to phytosanitary production of CGIAR genetic resources. This includes both gene banks and the breeding programs. So these are the 3 key messages which emphasizes the importance of the GHU mission to ensuring the CGIAR commitment to upholding the phytosanitary compliance, and likewise play its part in mitigating the pest impact. And of course, there are several other partners who made very important contributions. That includes a very esteemed director of Inter-African Phytosanitary Council, Dr. Jean-Gerard Musiamela, who enlisted various initiatives that are ongoing within Africa to protect, to take adequate precautions to enhance intercontinental trade as well as intracontinental trade from Africa, because this is becoming a hub for international export. And then the leader of Plant Quarantine Directorate of Nigerian Agriculture Quarantine Services, who presented examples of how the national quarantine organizations and CG centers interact and the benefits out of that partnership, especially in the area of capacity development. And then we have also presentation from the National Plant Production Organization representative from Mexico, who laid out the procedures that are in use in the continent, and the Deputy Director, Jane Zuguna from Kefri talked about the tree health, which is very much neglected aspect. And then partners from Asia, Dr. K. Anita representing Indian NPPO, NBPGR, talked about the overall perspectives and the changes that are happening in the phytosanitary landscape. And then the partner from Lebanese Agriculture Research Institute talked about the efforts that they are making in mitigating the emerging diseases such as wheat rust. And then lastly, the partner from the Philippines highlighted the cooperation between ED and the National Plant Production Organization based in the Philippines. So it's been very exciting and enlightening presentations. We learned a lot from it. And also there are presentations which are very key from the GHU leaders from all the 11 centers. What are the key takeaways from these presentations? I summarize just in one slide. Number one, there are several quarantine risks in CGIAR zones of operation. There is no part which is free from pests and diseases in the continent. So the areas where we operate, the risks are much more higher. GHUs have established fit for purpose protocols and optimize them to ensure safe transfer of germplasm. And this is happening during the last 50 years. This has been a very effective program. And of course, this is not something which is set in stone. And as a pest landscape change, as the new procedures comes in, there is always an augmentation. So GHUs are adapt with continuous augmentation of protocols with the changing pest landscapes and other demands. And we also demonstrated through these presentations very strong inter-center cooperation among GHUs and the coordinated action as one team in mitigating, in fighting the global phytosanitary issues. And we are emerging as a kind of very strong global phytosanitary force where we can play a very important role in a number of areas. We have excellent and mutually rewarding partnerships with the national plant production organizations. So this is very clear, very clearly demonstrated. And we also showed aspiration to further strengthen this area. Of course, there are a lot of challenges exist. There are challenges in knowledge. There is a limitation of pest and disease in certain crops and orphan crops, trees, forages. There are challenges, there are limited technologies. There is a scope for improving the technologies, especially to make them more efficient and cost effective, as well as practices, both within CG and also among the partners to improve the safe distribution of germplasm. And there are many opportunities. There are areas where GHUs and CG centers can make a significant contribution, especially in the areas of capacity development of partners. We can also work together with intergovernmental agencies in enhancing the policies to support germplasm movement from CGIAR and international programs, especially the material that moves for the research, because there is a huge gap, and that is something we'll be discussing today. And there is also scope for new innovations in diagnostics and phytosanitary procedures. And likewise, new partnerships with both international organizations and the national organizations. So these are just the few points, and more we will hear from the session reports. And as far as today's program is concerned, we have three elements. The first session, which we already started, is a brief session reports coming from each of the continent. Asia report to be given by Rajan Sharma from ICRISAT, Latin American report to be given by Jan Cruz from SIP, and Africa report is going to be presented by Alamayo from ILRI. This is followed by a panel discussion and Q&A session. We have excellent panel. These have been carefully chosen to represent some of the key areas which are very important for germplasm health issues. Unfortunately, one of the panel member from ECOWAS SPS desk could not join because of other commitments. Otherwise, we have full panel. And we are very lucky that this panel session is going to be moderated by Mirko from IPPC Rome. He's the project officer for International Year of Plant Health. He has immense experience in organizing international meetings, and he's going to hold this session. So we are very excited that these members have participated on our invitation. And then, of course, GHU team is there to ask questions and also to support the discussions that will be happening today. So with this brief introduction, I call upon the first presenter, Rajan Sharma, to give the Asia report. He can start sharing his screen. I would like to encourage participants to put any questions in the chat box. We'll be extracting and synthesize, and that will be asked during the Q&A session. And if there is any burning issues, you can also use the raise hand option so that we may open the microphone to let you speak. Okay. Yeah, I stopped sharing my screen and I let Rajan Sharma to make his presentation. You have 10 minutes, Rajan.
Thanks, Lava. Yeah, I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, your screen is visible.
Okay.
You can go to presentation mode. Yeah, go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Rajan Sharma. I'm in Nepal, we have three CG centers, ICRISAT, ICADA, and ERI, and then we have three GHUs as well. So in the Asia program, there were three presentations from all the three GHU had. They provided an update on the work that is being carried out in each GHU. And then there were three invited presentations from the NPPO side. So Dr. K. Anita from Indian NPPO, Dr. Rola Amil from Lebanese Agriculture Research Institute, Lebanon, so NPPO for Lebanon, and then Miss Ellen Tandog Molon from Philippines. I'll directly go to the summary of presentation. So the presentations are being summarized in these two slides. So first I'll present about the presentation from GHU side and then from the MPPO side. In all the three presentations from GHUs, they highlighted the close collaboration and support from NPPO for the exchange of germplasm. Lawa also mentioned about that, and it is very critical for the safe exchange of the germplasm for the all the CG mandate crops. In her presentation, Safa Kumari from ICADA GHU, she mentioned that the core activities on collection, characterization, and conservation are conducted at Lebanon for farmland, grass pea, forage, and wild relatives, and at Morocco for cultivated species of wheat, barley, chickpea, and lentil. They could facilitate the germplasm exchange of more than 100,000 accession, both import as well as export during 2019. I presented for ICRISAT GHU, and then I mentioned that at the PQ at ICRISAT, we facilitated the export of more than 1.34 million seed samples of sorghum, pearl millet, finger millet, groundnut, pigeon pea, chickpea, and small millets to 174 countries. And we imported more than 190,000 seed samples from 96 countries since 1974. I also, gave the numbers for the germplasm exchange during 2019. There is an urgent need for the identification of new fungicide because the currently used fungicide for seed treatment, they are going to be banned. And then there is also, the need for the identification of new fungicide because of the associated fungicide resistance development risk in the pathogens. So we evaluated different fungicide and we could identify a new combi product called tabuconazole plus trifloxystrobin. This is effective against both the pest of pathogens of sorghum, pearl millet, as well as groundnut, and that can be recommended for the seed treatment. ERI-GHU, Dr. Gururaj, he presented the update on ERI-GHU. He mentioned that they have adopted ISTA standards, they have improved SOPs, operation manuals, and that they're able to reduce turnaround time. They're involved in the capability enhancement in Cambodia, Myanmar. They're also providing training to the requester teams for the better documentation. And the summary of the NPPO's presentations, Dr. Rola from Lebanon, she mentioned that the Ministry of Agriculture is the regulatory and legal institution for the decision making and issuing laws and decrees for quarantine pest lists. They're involved in routine in country surveillance to detect pests that infect food crops as well as vegetables. They're also involved in monitoring of the pathogenic variation in wheat rust, evaluation of sanitary status of main fruits and vegetable crops. Dr. Anita from India, she mentioned that she also highlighted the importance of germplasm exchange, and then the CG Center's role in distribution of germplasm. She presented the export sample data for Equisat, Cement, and ERI that they could facilitate. And then she also highlighted the Indian quarantine regulation that governs the exchange of germplasm from India. She also highlighted the benefits and present status of ePhyto, its IPPC ePhyto solution, especially for the trade. Then from the MPPO from the Philippines, she mentioned that the National Plant Quarantine Services Division of Bureau of Plant Industry is the regulatory arm of the Philippines Department of Agriculture. They have 23 stations and 12 substations. The main responsibility is of pest surveillance, especially with respect to quarantine pest risk analysis, establishment of pest-free areas, other relevant functions to achieve the mandates. That is the formulate rules, guidelines, orders, etc. She also highlighted the partnership with ERI. Then
5 minutes.
The challenges that coming out of these presentations were, especially for GHU, the unplanned submission of samples for quarantine processing, providing incomplete documents by the concerned scientists, and more samples during peak period. We all know because of climate change, minor pests and diseases, they are becoming more important. There is lack of crop-wise list of quarantine pests and regulatory non-quarantine pests for all the countries. Banning of some of the pesticides by the government, which are used for salvaging, is a concern. Then the depletion of the strength of experienced plant protection personnel, especially the mycologists. This is a big challenge. Then also the challenge is time gap between the consignment release and planting in the post-anti-quarantine isolation area. Growing of several consignment at the same time with all different or the same crops in the same area. And then one concern highlighted was the issuance of non-compliance notices to the exporting countries without scientific basis, even when there is association of non-pathogenic endophytes or the saprophytes. The main recommendation that emerged are using procedure of seed-borne pest management as full package is the cornerstone for safe exchange of germplasm. We need to raise awareness at national level about adopting quarantine measures to save crops from invasive pests and diseases to help in preserving food security. Keep commitment and networking between GHUs and national partners for the new emerging pests and diseases. Update national pest list biannually and avoid pseudo absence. The development of effective detection methods will help in rapid and accurate detection of seed-borne pests. Diagnostics techniques and treatment protocol for specific pathogens should be made available on IPPC website. This was one of the recommendations from the presentations. Then growing of the imported sample in quarantine isolation area is very important. So at least part of each sample must be grown in the isolation area, and the inspection of crop at right stage is very essential. Building up of scientific evidence to counter unreasonable SPS measures. That's what also recommended as the one of the highlights. Then the close coordination among all the stakeholders, especially the regional coordination among NPPOs is required. And finally, a need to identify suitable alternatives to methyl bromide fumigation and other likely to be banned chemicals for seed treatment. That was also one of the recommendations. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Rajan. You are spot on time. Very good. Well done. Nice points. We will pick this during the discussion session. Now I will invite Jan Cruz from SIP to share his screen and make the summary presentation of Latin America session.
Thank you. Let me see if I can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
We can see you.
Good. Let me try and share my screen. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, it's coming up.
Just give me a sign when it's done.
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Go ahead. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. So yes, I'll make a summary of the Latin American session, which we had on Wednesday morning in our time zone. Just to remind you of the people who are presenting. So I was moderating the session myself, and then we had presentations by Maritza Cuervo of the GHU of CIAT in Colombia, and then we had, in addition, Amos Alacoña of the Seed Health Unit at CIMIT, Dr. Giovanna Miller, she presented on behalf of the GHU in SIP, Lima, Peru, and then we had some guests, the Ingeniero Israel Espinosa, who was presenting Senacica, which is the NPPO in Mexico, and their procedures, and then Dr. Jorge Andrade of SIP presented an effort that's ongoing currently to manage potato purple top, which is an emerging disease in Latin America. So just to give a summary of the presentations that were given, maybe something that is a bit unique compared to the other regions is that actually all three Latin American germplasm health units follow ISO 17025 quality assurance systems and also are accredited, which is maybe different from many other GHUs. CIMIT presented their procedures to assure pest-free status of maize and wheat germplasm in different global regions, and examples were given for Carnal Balt in Mexico, for maize lethal necrosis in Africa, and UG99 rust as well. And they also described the development of their pathogen laboratory information system, which is in collaboration with SIP and with funding from the GeneBank platform, actually, to support seed health tracking with Germplasm Bank across the breeding cycles with their breeders. CIAT, they focused their presentation on how they certified phytosanitary status of beans, forages, and cassava, and they particularly focused on cassava, and gave an example of how the methods have evolved over time to index the disease status of cassava, starting from grafting early on, moving to ELISA, then double-stranded RNA techniques, RT-PCR, high-throughput sequencing, quantitative PCR, and finally LAMP, of various different pathogens that are associated with one of the very important diseases, which is called frog skin disease in Latin America. SIP presented how they manage germplasm health testing of potato and sweet potato, and the presentation was focused on efforts to develop and validate a new method based on high-throughput sequencing, which will enable faster testing to reduce the time of phytosanitary testing, which is currently a major bottleneck in these crops. And this is something also that is done in collaboration with other GHUs. Senacica presented the structure and functioning of their organization, the legislation, phytosanitary requirements, and surveillance and inspection methods, and their procedures, including their networks of laboratories with some examples for specific pests. And they also highlighted their close collaboration with CIMIT regarding cereal crops. And then finally, Jorge Andrade presented the history of the emergence of potato purple top disease that's associated with the North American potato psyllid in Ecuador, and how it is being managed, and led to the creation of a regional technical committee to control this emerging disease. This was followed by some discussion about the challenges that we're currently facing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. A major challenge that all panelists shared was the reduced capacity due to limitations in the number of people being able to work in laboratories, as well as travel restrictions, whereas additional limitations were presented by slow importation of reagents that are needed, as well as reduced capacity from supporting areas within the organization. Nevertheless, everybody mentioned that they've had a lot of support of their management, and because of that, they've still been able to minimize the impact of these limitations and largely achieve their targets. National programs have been similarly affected by these situations, leading to longer waiting times in document processing and documentation, fewer inspections of incoming goods, and frequency of pest monitoring. But nevertheless, there hasn't been really any evidence of adverse effects due to the higher risk that it might have caused. Then we discussed a bit the trade-off between cost and sensitivity of accurate methods. So we keep on updating ourselves with newer, faster, more sensitive methods, but often they're also more expensive, and next generation sequencing or high throughput sequencing is a typical example. We discussed how that could make testing quite costly and limited. It was pointed out how GHU funding actually was critical in supporting some of these upgrades that have been happening in the last years, but that the costs can be managed also, because not in all circumstances that we need these super sensitive and highly accurate methods, and normal classical methods can work quite fine, and so they can be targeted to special situations to manage the costs. Cost of testing has presented some problems when projects have had phytosanitary issues that were not budgeted for, however. Conclusions, I think from all the presentations, it was quite clear that close collaboration with the National Plant Protection Organization is key to the success of all of the GHUs. We have some emerging issues in Latin America. Potato purple top is an example of that, but it's also a nice example of how different organizations, including 2 CGIAR centers and 6 different countries, have come together to manage the disease. Fusarium wilt, tropical race 4 in banana is another example of a recently introduced and threatening disease. But it's being managed by many ongoing activities. And I think with that, I will conclude and hope I'm still on time.
Indeed. Thanks a lot, Jan. Excellent. Very nice summary and good conclusions. I call upon the last speaker of this session, Alamayo from ILRI, to share summary report of Africa session, please.
Hello, everyone. Do you see my screen?
Oh, yes.
Okay, this is Alamayo speaking. I will summarize the discussion we had yesterday from African section.
You can use presentation mode.
Okay. And in our discussion, we had I think 7 presentation. One from Inter-African Phytosanitary Council, and we had also a presentation from Africa Rise by Dr. Mario Noel, and from Ledge University by Dr. Meseret Sebastian. And we had from ICRAF and a colleague from the Kenya National System, Dr. Alice and Dr. Jen. And I myself presented information from the ILRI side, Dr. Lava Kuma from IITA, and Obe John, Mr. Obe John from Nigerian Agricultural Quarantine Service and a CGIAR partner. And finally, concluding remark from Michael Alberton. And summary of our discussion found out that there are 4 CG centers, which holds one of the most diverse species, ranging from root and tuber crops, cereals and legumes, and indigenous food crops, tree and forages. And these centers hold over 87,000 accession from over 1,000 species. And there are a lot of conservation activity across at least across 18 countries in Africa. And most of these centers distribute the genetic resources across many countries over years. There is a good inter-central collaboration among these centers. And from the discussion also, we discovered there is an excellent collaboration with the Inter-African Phytosanitary Council and the National Plant Protection Organization by these centers, especially in the host countries. And in the summary of the discussion, we also realized that there are several notorious quarantine pathogens and pests in sub-Saharan Africa. And we realized, or we understood that, or the centers understood that there were standard procedures which has been established for production and distribution of safe germplasm for food stable crops. And it has been recognized that there was a leveraging from the interplay of researches for speeding up of MUSA and adoption of innovative diagnostic technologies, especially high throughput indexing, which help us to which has been standardized for clonal crop viruses indexing. There is also a good initiative of using non-invasive seed health testing method, which is an example of spectral imaging. And there are some also testing innovative seed treatment approaches, especially in Africa rices for testing different organic bioagents to control diseases. And there is a green pass phytosanitary protocols which have been advocated and some grounds have been placed in place to fast track distribution of healthy certified germplasm from CG centers. And we have also discussed or realized a number of challenges. One of the challenges was seed health management, which requires an integrated approach, starting with healthy seed, field management, seed processing, drying, and packaging. The other challenge was seed treatment procedures, lack of information, and also lack of quick and simple diagnostic procedure for the different diseases, especially for forage trees and indigenous legumes. And the third challenge was the use of uncertified germplasm and limited pathogen information, and also limited attention from research and especially from the national and also other regional organizations. It has been realized that there is a huge impact of disease and pests on tree due to the long generation life cycle. And there is also a huge risk of transboundary pest spread within Africa. And this is highly related to the unauthorized distribution and informal exchange of germplasm in the region. The centers also come up with a number of recommendations, and some of these recommendations include the use of enhanced modern diagnostic tools for seed health management and pathogen detection. And some huge potential has been discussed to discover disease and the documentation of pathogens to advise control measures, and also distribution of germplasms. Emerging disease and the pests in the region, especially for the preparation and responding capability, and also cooperations among the centers and also with the national partners. There is a lot of risks of unknown knowns and unknown unknowns, and which could be a potential pandemic pathogen of plant origin or food crops origin in the future. And also we agreed, we also recommend updating pest lists for the CG centers and also the main crops in the regions. And we also discuss we need to be the leader in the research and development in the region, and also we need to be able to influence policy makers at the national and regional levels. Much networking on emerging tree diseases has to be strengthened also, and we need to identify efficient control measures, or especially for seed treatments. Advances consultation to realize green pass protocols is needed as well, and we need to improve interlinkage between the centers working in the continent for shared services and technical cooperations, and also enhance GHU community of practices as a training platform for developing phytosanitary capacities, and generate baseline data on pest and disease of orphan crops, trees, forages to strengthen the phytosanitary testing schedules for safe germplasm movement. And finally, we need to strengthen this partnership with the African Phytosanitary Council, a national plant protection organization, and others to mitigate pest impact on agriculture production in Africa. And that is my last presentation, last slide. And thank you. And back to you, Lava.
Thank you very much, Almayo. I'm very pleased. All the presentations were on time. I see the chat box is very active. People are typing and exchanging information as speakers are presenting the viewpoints. So this is very, very encouraging, and I do welcome participants to input their questions, comments in the chat box so that simultaneously they can be addressed or they can be brought back onto the main discussion panel. I would now hand over to lead the next session to Mirko, and also I will ask all the panel members to open their cameras and microphones. So over to you.
Thanks very much, Lava. I just unmuted myself. So thank you all for attending this session, which will talk about a bit the conclusion and various aspects relating to plant health. I would like to start by thanking Dr. Lava Kumar and Aita and various CGIAR centers for their kind invitation. I'm very pleased today to be here representing the Secretariat of the International Plant Protection Convention based at FAO in this webinar that is indeed organized in the context of the International Year of Plant Health 2020. So the Phytosanitary Awareness Week is organized this year by CGIAR and its various centers in collaboration with FAO, the Secretariat of the International Plant Protection Convention. We have heard also of the active participation of regional and national plant protection organizations, as well as the Crop Trust. So I would like to thank all the partners in organizing this very important event in the context of the IYPH, and all the participants for their active engagement. First of all, I think that we need to highlight how awareness raising in the field of plant health is essential, not only for boosting, let's say, the understanding of the importance of having healthy plants for a healthy life, but also to ensure that policymakers are aware of the importance of sustaining research efforts, collaboration, and networking at all levels. So with this in mind, we had back in 2018, the United Nations General Assembly adopting the resolution proclaiming 2020 the International Year of Plant Health. As we have seen with the current global pandemic of COVID-19, viruses and other pathogens can actually impact the lives of many humans and having extreme consequences on many different levels. However, one thing that we would like to highlight is that not only humans, but also plants get sick. And this is why we're here today, to ensure that the wider public, but also policymakers, are aware of the importance of sustaining plant health at all levels in different ways, and to sustain the work of all partners that support the healthy life for plants all over the planet. So allow me to introduce this session by saying that I'm very pleased to be joined by a distinguished panel of experts that will make some introductory remarks now. So I would like to first of all ask all the speakers, starting with Monica Mezzalama, Ravi Kartarpal, Michael Aberton, Michael Halewood, in this order, to please introduce yourselves briefly and possibly naming your organization, relevant expertise, before we actually get into the more interactive session. So with this, I would like to leave the floor to Monica for her introductory presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mirko, and nice meeting you also through his video conference. And thanks to Lava and all for having me today. I am a plant pathologist. I have been working at the International Center for the Improvement of Maize and Wheat seed meat in Mexico for 23 years. And a couple of years ago, I came back to Italy to work at the university here in my hometown, Torino. And I joined also the group of AgroInnova, which is a center of competence of the university devoted to research and also diagnostics. So I do not test germplasm any longer, but I am involved with a lot of testing for the samples that the farmers, the industry, the organization, agricultural organization take to our laboratory for diagnosis. I work now more than only wheat and maize. I have to take care of several crops that are of economical importance in Italy.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Monica, for your kind introduction. I will now leave the floor to Ravi.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be a panelist in your session. And at the outset, before I speak about me, I would like to thank Lava Kumar from IITA for really organizing this very important show and this very important International Year of Plant Health, which finally changed to be International Year of Human Health by COVID. But still, we have to talk about plant health. And I represent Asia Pacific Association of Agriculture Research Institution. I'm an executive secretary. We have 85 members, country members, all CG institutions, a lot of sub-regional fora and a lot of associations and all as a member. And we work on strengthening agri-food research and innovation system in Asia Pacific region. And we work with projects also. We do 2 SPS projects through STDF WTO on pesticide risk mitigation by promotion of biopesticide. And also recently we got a project preparation grant for working on enhancing seed trade in Asia Pacific region by fostering public-private partnership. So, and also we are working on phytosanitary capacity building in Bangladesh after the phytosanitary capacity evaluation was done there as per IPPC module. We also work on innovation. I work with FAO, Research and Extension Unit, with the Tropical Agriculture Platform of FAO on agriculture innovation system. Rather, I'm chairing that platform now for the coming 2 years. And we have projects from FAO, European Union, and French Agency for Development, and CGIAR to work on innovation system in the region. And then we work with ACIAR and IFPRI, which is another CGIAR institution on policy, to work on agriculture science technology indicator project, where we work on investment vis-a-vis the GDP growth on social science. Then we have some good work on the biotechnology and bioresources with the support from Council of Agriculture. Having said that, before joining APARI 3 years back, I was working for CABI. It's a UK-based organization. I was CABI South Asia regional director here, working on similar pattern, but in South Asia before. And I worked there for 7.5 years. Before CABI, about 2.5, 3 decades, I worked with National Agriculture Research System on the germplasm quarantine. And that is what brought me here. I still keep my first love alive. And we are now working at a different level on policies and all. And I have worked as a consultant for FAO, for World Bank and USDA on many SPS projects and in a couple of expert groups of APPC and IPPC earlier. And also I have represented Asia in the SPS working group in STDF WTO 3 years back. And that is all in brief. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ravi, for condensing such a rich experience in only a few minutes. Now, I will leave the floor to Michael Aberton for his introduction. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'm not going to thank Lava because I think he's had enough thanks already. My name is Michael Abberton. Yes, I'm the head of the Genetic Resources Centre in International Institute of Tropical Agriculture, IITA, based in Ibadan, Nigeria. We have an extensive gene bank with, let me just say quickly, cassava, yam, bananas, maize, soybean, cowpea, and some other crops of importance to sub-Saharan Africa, such as Bambara groundnut, African yam bean. We work, of course, very closely with LAVA's unit in terms of germplasm health, in terms of virology. Those two units, of course, have to work very closely together, although of course, the work of the Germplasm Health Unit goes beyond that and also deals with the breeders and so on. So that's all for now.
Thanks very much, Michael. And indeed, it's a pleasure to hear from you. I will now leave the floor to the other Michael Halewood for his introductions.
Thank you. Thank you, Lava. Thank you, everyone, for including me in this panel. I joined the organization now known as the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT almost 20 years ago. In the last 5 years, I've been one of the coordinators of the Gene Bank Platform Policy Module set up by the CGIAR. And in that capacity, I have spent a lot of my time coordinating CGIAR participation in meetings of the governing body of the treaty and various sub-bodies under the International Treaty on Plant Genetic Resources for Food and Agriculture, and also on the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Nagoya Protocol on Access and Benefit Sharing. So most of my work has been on helping the CGIAR fit in and operate under international rules having to do with access and benefit sharing. I'm not an expert in germplasm health or the international regulation of the movement of plants to ensure that they're healthy. But I trust Lava's instincts that some insights that can be gained from our experiences under the international frameworks and the ways in which countries have exercised their sovereignty to assist the CGIAR in delivering on our role in the international system of conservation and use of plant genetic resources can maybe be useful for looking at similar accommodations and support under the IPPC.
Thanks very much, Michael. And indeed, your contribution would be extremely valuable when it comes to sharing information and knowledge about genetic resources of plants and the experience with the international treaty as well as the CBD. In the end, conservation of biodiversity is an objective that we can only achieve by working together in the many spheres that relate to plant health and also biodiversity conservation. So thank you for that. I will now move to the following part of our session, which is these introductory questions to our speakers. And I will use the same order as before, starting with Monica Metalama. So I think we're talking about many times the efficiency of phytosanitary measures, and this actually depends on many different factors, ranging from pest elimination methods, crop production methods, diagnostics, surveillance issues, and many others. But as we see that many technologies are rapidly evolving and a wide variety of options become available that have different sensitivities and robustness. So my question is, what do you think is the most appropriate technology or range of technologies for phytosanitary and seed health testing? And how do you think that GHUs or any phytosanitary practitioners can decide on the best technology to apply for achieving this task? Thank you.
Thanks, Mirko. So I have 4 minutes, if I'm not wrong, so I would try to say all what I want to say, and it is a lot. These 3-4 days have been so important in learning how the centers are moving towards the adoption and use of the most sophisticated methods that are available at the moment. So I would not like to go into the methods. We had a great presentation from Jan Krause, from Sebastian Massart, from Lava Kumar, and the rest of them. So the point here, in my opinion, is the methods are there. Every GHU is perfectly updated in adoption, etc. I think that for the good result of a technique, of a protocol, there are a few other issues that I didn't hear to talk about these days and that I think must be kept in consideration. I heard big numbers. I heard that every center tests thousands of entries, thousands of germplasm accessions. On those numbers, I think that one important issue is sampling, because with a wrong sampling method, the method that then you use for detection can be not as sensitive or as specific. So I really think that a sampling procedure, a standardized sampling procedure, must studied and put as a first step for the adoption of a very good detection method. Second, I think that the adoption of the most advanced method is the best, is the excellent step that one laboratory can do. But another important part of the work is done in the field. The multiplication sites must be really well managed, because if a seed or the material arrives to the lab with some problems already, then it becomes very difficult then to save the material. So here we want to save the material. Besides testing thousands of entries, we want also to conserve all that material. The multiplication is expensive when we come down to germplasm bank management and seed health or germplasm health testing. We talk about thousands and thousands of dollars. It's very expensive. So we need to make sure that we do not discard too much material, because it comes to be too much infected with pathogens that are not desirable. Third, I think that another important point is to make a clear distinction among all those pathogens that are of phytosanitary concern, and the pathogens that are of economical importance. These are two aspects. So we need to think about what is the method for one purpose and what can be the method for the other purpose. Not everything goes in the same basket. So I suppose that here we need to make sure that we take care, like Jan, for instance, and Sebastian has showed regarding the virus indexing, from, for instance, the detection of Fusarium verticilioides in maize, which is not a pathogen of, my time is over, of phytosanitary importance in the sense of transboundary movement. And well, the last point I wanted to make is that all these protocols and methods are the best that we can have available at the moment. One important thing, in my opinion, is to have a SharePoint. In the past, we had a program in the CG among the germplasm health units, and we had a platform where we could find all the methods that every laboratory was using, adopting, with the flaws, with the pros, with the cons. So in my opinion, something like this should be, again, implemented for the laboratories to use. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Monica. And indeed, thanks for the extremely valuable points that you raised. I think you mentioned the importance of sampling methods to be harmonized in a way, and learning from experience of different laboratories, as well as the importance of obviously working in the field and saving test materials as much as possible, and trying to make a distinction between quarantine pests essentially and regulated non-quarantine pests that are of economic importance and still have to be tested and somehow using possibly different methods. So thank you very much for your intervention. I will seek if there are any questions on this specific point from the floor. And in any case, if not, we would proceed with the second point and question, which goes to Ravi. And obviously, we'd be happy to receiving questions also in another moment later in the discussion. However, let me go with the second part, seeing no interventions for now. So, well, germplasm from gene banks and breeding programs are often exported in small quantities. Yeah. So, and many of the standard sampling procedures are not applicable. So there is basically a limitation also of pest lists for several orphan and wild species. And despite this, CGIAR and other research organizations appear to be making the best use of available methods for safe international movement. So ISPM 36, which is the ISPM on integrated measures for plants, and also ISPM 38, which is for the international movement of seeds, may have addressed few challenges. But do you see a need for one possibly additional regulation or additional guidance for exporting genetic resources from gene banks and international breeding programs? So what do you think also that maybe specific issues that such a guidance or ISPM even should address? And what do you think would be the benefits? So I will leave you with this question now, Ravi. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. It's a very long question. You give a background also. The first part of your question is on the operational part, which talks about the quantity of the germplasm which is exchanged and which creates a problem. And on this operational part, there are definitely no sampling guidelines. It is done by the wisdom of the NPPOs. That is one point. Your second part, I see, is more on the policy side or the future side, how we can really work on new standards or guidelines for exchange of germplasm. Well, I would like to say germplasm, when they are like a botanical seed, and exchanged, they follow the seed-borne pathogens. But International Seed Federation has come up with regulated pest list initiative, which you might be knowing, where we look for seed-transmitted pathogens. So that is one thing which, first of all, germplasm has to really follow. Most of the countries have a seed-borne disease, not seed-transmitted in their list, and that creates an issue with the PRA when it is performed. Now, about the problems with the pest list of the wild species and all, the problem will remain. They are not a commodity, wild species, and they are only dealt by the germplasm handling unit or the quarantine labs. So data has to be collected from there, whatever pest has been occurring on them. So this is something which has to be done by the germplasm working group. However, when we look at the need for having a standard for germplasm, international exchange, germplasm exchange, or for the gene bank, I may be a bit harsh. I'm sorry, I'll be a bit harsh in saying that germplasm exchange is like an orphan subject. It is orphan. You look at the gene bank standard of FAO. They talk of germplasm supply and distribution. They talk of ITPGR FAA, they talk of ABS, the policy issues of CBD. That is all policy issues. They don't talk when it comes to operational part, how the exchange has to be done, how quarantine has to be done. They are very smartly talking about it has to be bilateral. What is bilateral? If we have to do from a CGIAR to a country in Bangladesh, which has no norms, I think nothing will work. There has to be too much of negotiation and discussion, or it just goes and the pathogens pass. So gene bank standards actually are not really catering to the topic. So it becomes an orphan from the angle of gene bank, which is the subject of biodiversity people. Then when you look at SPS agreement, germplasm again becomes an orphan. We try to have a project with STDF where we put the component of germplasm. What they say, no, 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 we talk of trade, we talk of commodity, no germplasm business. So there's no germplasm business in STDF, WTO, which actually is a SPS, and IPPC is a SPS standard setting body, that is all. So there's no norms for germplasm which can come by WTO, and gene bank standards, biodiversity people don't speak about it. Where does this orphan goes? Now, this being an orphan, and still the operation part has to be done, CGIAR invested a lot, and some of the NPPOs were really forming a system, and what IITA has done a wonderful job to come up with a green pass system, where they have the germplasm status in a value chain, right from collection, exploration, characterization, evaluation, and export. They have come to a green pass system, which is wonderful. But who will approve the green pass? Who will give authority for green pass? Will it be a part of phytosanitary certificate? What will happen to that? So looking at all those aspects, what I see, IPPC, if we say they have a standards committee which develop these standards, they will say, no, germplasm, oh, it is completely a biodiversity subject. It's not for trade. Yes, not for trade. Where do you go? That is where I believe this orphan has to be dealt by FAO. FAO deals with biodiversity. FAO deals with IPM. FAO deals with pest. FAO needs to be the key player to take it up. FAO needs to rope in IPPC, the secretariat of which is in FAO. And this has to be done in partnership with institutions like Biodiversity International, or like the CBD, like we have an interagency group for invasive alien species. That is what the FAO IPPC has done. Same thing here. What I feel, immediately if you look at, we need international best practices for germplasm exchange. Like best practices, guides and manuals are published by IPPC. So FAO can work with IPPC with an expert group to have international best practices for germplasm exchange. Otherwise, it is an orphan. Let me be very clear. Look at the National Act, Plant Quarantine Act, every country says research material and germplasm. Okay, but no norms. Norms, they follow SPS. SPS, no norms for germplasm. They say ISPM from IPPC, no. So that is why the confusion. That is why the confusion globally. I'm sorry for being a bit rough on this, but people have not dealt clearly at the top level. And I think FAO needs to take a lead, and FAO really needs to come up. And I must say, the CG gene banks are doing excellent job, along with some of the national gene banks. And here, CG now has a one CG policy. And I was involved in one of their document, research and innovation strategy of CG. They have 3 big strategies coming up in one CG, a draft of it. And we could see clearly here, CG management has to take a lead. Already what Lava Kumar and IITA has done is a unique job, which shows they had a mind in one CG 10 years back, 5 years back, bringing all one CG, all gene banks at one platform, bringing a common norms, common way of working at. So the CG management really has to take up. They have to take up with FAO, and then we develop a kind of an international best practice till we can convince for developing an international standard. And the scope of the international best practices for germplasm exchange should cover germplasm as seed, germplasm as vegetative propagule, it's not only seed, regulated pest list, which has to be very, like the International Seed Federation has developed, should be a part of doing PRA. Then the sampling procedures need special norms. They are exchanged in small numbers, and norms of post-entry quarantine, which is very, very important, as Dr. Rajan Sharma from the Asia scenario, he presented. And then the green pass concept has to be dealt with within that international best practice as how green pass is defined, who is authorized to issue. So we really need a working group. Just to develop a standard is a long procedure. You have to go through commission of phytosanitary measure, expert group, standard committee, blah, blah, blah. It takes 4 or 5 years, revision, this, that. I think we should, something very important is immediately required. We just need a platform through FAO for international best practices on germplasm exchange. And gradually we should go for the international standards on phytosanitary measure for germplasm exchange so that it changes its status from orphan to a normal thing in the world. So I think I will stop here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ravi. And indeed, you raise an excellent point on the fact that germplasm movement is an issue that has to be somehow dealt with at the international level to ensure that there is some coordination, some harmonization of measures that can try and avoid the spread of pests and diseases through its movement. Of course, personally, and I will talk on a personal basis here because, of course, high consultation is needed across all the institutions that you mentioned in your speech, ranging from the IPPC to FAO, CGIAR, and CBD maybe, and other relevant groups. I think yes, that you're right in your idea that having harmonized measures that can support this issue is definitely something that we should be aiming at as international community, and the way this is done, I think, should be the object of analysis and assessment at the highest level, probably in the respective organizations. And I'm happy that you raised this point because certainly, cross-cutting collaboration is something we're looking for in this kind of events. And this is definitely a point I will bring back home to ensure that at least it's put on the table in one way or another. So thank you for that. The third intervention will be for Michael Aberton. We have seen how basically CGIAR gene banks and breeding programs export a large number of samples under the international treaty. And this is likely to increase under the One CGIAR initiatives. These initiatives have been mentioned. Some of them include the Crops to End Hunger, for example. So we know that GHUs plays a significant part in enabling these international transfers. So my question is, what do you see as a significant bottlenecks from GHUs functions from the point of germplasm exporter to importer? So, and after this question, I would like to understand what improvements you would suggest to improve, to better the international germplasm transfer process. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes.
All right. I want to address the issue, first of all, from the standpoint of the clonal crops, which are perhaps not as much given as much attention as seed crops. But, in sub-Saharan Africa, many of the staples are clonal crops, obviously, cassava, yam, banana, and they intrinsically have different challenges, if you like, with respect to phytosanitary issues. So that's one thing I want to mention is we are developing things, and Jan mentioned one approach which is being developed by SIP and IITA using next generation sequencing, and there's really a need to really develop those things more, to use genomics more in terms of virus diagnostics, because the issues to do with the clonal crops are, first of all, the time it takes to actually get the diagnostics of viruses, and then also the cleaning. So with respect to the first point, which is the time to diagnosis, I think the next generation sequencing approaches have a lot of potential. And then we also need still to develop faster methods of actual cleaning, actually getting the viruses out. And I'm talking about predominantly, of course, material which has been brought into tissue culture, because of course the tissue culture plantlets are the main method of distribution for clonal crops. So I would really highlight that as one important thing that we need to keep the research and the research into implementation. It has started, but it needs to continue and really to be developed. And of course, again, not all clonal crops also are the same. You know, we know that yams in particular are really quite challenging with respect to both bringing them into tissue culture quickly and the diagnostics and cleaning of viruses. But also, having said that, I think we need to be a little bit careful in the application of these new methods because they are very powerful, and they're going to become even more powerful. So I think we need to be careful that we have to use them in a way that's, if you like, sensible, because, you know, the potential is there that we're going to be using DNA methods to detect fragments of viruses and this and that, which are really not of phytosanitary significance. So we have to be careful with that. And that brings me to my next point, which is policy. So I think all these technological changes have to go together with a policy environment which is going to be able to use them, but use them in a way that doesn't lose sight of the objectives of the arrangement, which in other words doesn't lose sight of that. You know, we do need to transfer material, and we need to be flexible in the application of the new materials, of the new approaches. So that's my second point. Third point then is that we need to bring along, you know, we need to strengthen. So as was mentioned, the GeneBank platform, they've done something at the CG level with respect to, if you like, the development, the coordination things, SOPs, all the rest of it. We need to strengthen that, and we need to strengthen that networking with the national system as well. Particularly in Africa, you know, some of the national systems are very under-resourced, and they need that networking. The CG centers have to play a very important role in that networking, the capacity development. Yeah, and I think my final point is that all this is becoming more important, and we need about really linking in the work of germplasm health units with surveillance and monitoring of new pests and diseases. That in a typical year, we have increasing movement of people around the world. Not this year. We know we have coming in. So all that needs to be brought into it. And what I'm saying finally is the germplasm health units, you know, they're not alone. They have to be well integrated with everything else that's going on. Surveillance, monitoring, developments in high throughput, for example, multiplication of clonal crop puts an additional pressure on germplasm health units to increase their throughput, to increase their turnaround time, to reduce their costs. So as developments, we need to have good levels of communication with germplasm health units within themselves, but also to the wider world of breeding, of seed systems going on. And I think that's where we all need to help. It's not only a question of awareness, but communication and integration. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Michael, and thanks for bringing about the message that research is indeed essential when it comes to implementation of measures and policies, and that we need to ensure that policies that are developed to make use of these new technologies are not losing sight of the overall objectives, and also we manage to strengthen you know, these relationships with the field, especially with countries and particular MPPOs for the application of for phytosanitary measures, as well as the importance to integrate with the surveillance and other relevant methods. So thank you for that. I will now move on and discuss the fact that the international exchange of genetic resources is basically governed by several regulations and even international treaties. And I am informed that CGIAR has a special consideration for the exchange of Annex 1 crop germplasm from its gene banks, which is also part of the A15 article of the plant treaty. So in this regard, phytosanitary regulations are the next level of control for international transfers. So it's basically a dynamic kind of environment where change is like a constant. So my question is now for Michael Halewood. In your view, what improvements are needed to ease the international transfer of germplasm, maybe with less bureaucracy and, you know, still keeping safety of such transfers? And what do you see, and do you see the benefits of this initiative has been mentioned by a previous speaker regarding a special international transfer protocol, like a green pass for CGIAR? So Michael, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'd like to, as I said in my introduction, answer your question by referencing our experiences under the access and benefit sharing agreements that we get to work under, and drawing from that some inferences that might be of relevance for this, for a harmonized and faster movement of germplasm, looking at the germplasm health issues in the Green Pass. You know, we've benefited tremendously under the CGIAR by having our collections included under the framework of the plant treaty, and being able as a result to distribute all of our materials from our gene banks and from our breeding programs under the standard material transfer agreement of the plant treaty. And when I say standard, I mean standard. It's just one instrument, and it has and its terms can't be changed. And those terms have to do with the conditions under which material is accessed, the conditions under which it can be used, and benefits, if generated, are shared. And there's one way to do it, one way only, and that's set out in the treaty and in the standard material transfer agreement. And that's made it relatively easy for us to do our jobs, to maintain our responsibilities as international agricultural research organizations, playing a pretty key role, I think, in the global system of conservation and use of plant genetic resources for food and agriculture. And, you know, I just wanted to draw your attention to part of the text of the SMTA, where I think some of the starkness of the difference between the way in which the standard mechanism is set up for dealing with access and benefit sharing contrasts with the way the situation that currently pertains for phytosanitary regulation. And that's in the standard material transfer agreement. As I say, it's a standard, and all these other issues are dealt with no doubt in the mind of the provider or the recipient, what the conditions are. Under Article 9, under warranty, it says the provider makes no warranties as to the safety of the material. The phytosanitary condition of the material is warranted only as described in any attached phytosanitary certificate, and the recipient assumes full responsibility for complying with the recipient's national quarantine and biosafety regulations and rules to import or release the genetic material. So again, like Ravi said in his comments, when you get to germplasm health issues in these instruments having to do with ABS or even the gene bank standards, as soon as you get to phytosanitary issues, you opt out and look at something bilaterally as though that's a necessary solution. And of course, that's the basic building block we need to work with, is national sovereign rights and interests in regulating both access, but also regulating materials that come into their countries. But the lesson we can learn, at least from, or insights we can gain from the access and benefit sharing world, is that countries have exercised their sovereignty to set up systems that facilitate movement of material, and in particular, create policy support for the CGIAR centers, given our role in the international system. And so now I'll just go back and review some of that. You know, in 1994, the CGIAR centers signed agreements with FAO, whereby we said we were holding material in our international collections in trust for the good of humankind, and that we undertook to make that material available for free for agricultural research. And we agreed that we would hold and conserve that material subject to international standards. So here we are adopting responsibilities in a role that is not equivalent, for example, for national programs or for companies or for farmers organizations or civil society organizations. We actually have an international legal obligation to maintain that material and make it available under international standards. You know, that arrangement was rolled over under our agreements with the plant treaty, pursuant to Article 15 of the Plant Treaty, where we agreed to take those in-trust collections that we held under the in-trust agreements in 1994 and maintain them under the treaty framework. And as I say, that's worked very well over the course of the first 11 years of the operation of that system. The CG centers distributed over 5 million samples at PGRFA under almost 60,000 standard material transfer agreements. And that represents about 90% of all the PGRFA plant genetic resources that have been transferred under the overall framework of the multilateral system of access and benefit sharing under the treaty. And what's interesting about this, of course, is that mostly international laws apply to countries. Countries are the subjects of international laws, and when they implement them, those countries make them apply to constituent subjects or international or national organizations. But there's nothing actually to reach out to and govern international organizations per se, and the treaty is very special in this, recognizing the importance of having the CGIAR materials included in the multilateral system of the treaty. The people who organize, the countries that negotiated the treaty text, put in a special provision, Article 15, inviting the centers to make agreements to put those collections in. And of course, we did agree and we did do that. But this is an accommodation made by countries exercising their sovereignty and developing this international law to make it work in a way to include our materials, but to make it possible for us to exercise under that system. And so basically to wrap up, it's like looking back at, again, Article 9 of the SMTA, one asks oneself, or could ask oneself, in the same way that contracting parties exercise their sovereignty to make sure the rules fit and supported the CGIAR centers in their role holding this material on behalf, trust on behalf of the international community for access and benefit sharing, could they exercise the same rights, rules, responsibilities that they have under the IPPC to create a specialized mechanism, some way of streamlining the movement of germplasm and the regulation of germplasm health in a way that's complementary? And this takes us back again to Article 9. Would you have both the SMTA and a green pass going together, working together, both systems working together in mutually supportive ways to facilitate both streamlined access and benefit sharing, but also streamlined phytosanitary regulation? And I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Michael. And indeed, thanks very much for providing an excellent overview of the access and benefit sharing mechanisms, and also digging into some of the history that the treaty, the plant treaty, and countries had in basically dealing with this germplasm movement, and how basically we can learn from the past, and also try and look into a complementarity of action of the different instruments and mechanisms to ensure that germplasms continue to be seen as and used as a something positive for humanity, basically, while taking account of the phytosanitary risks inherent with its movement. So thanks very much for that. I will now take some of the questions probably from the chat box, or ask if anyone in the audience is interested in taking the floor for any questions you may have. And I'll probably also, I see that there has been some questions in the chat box, so maybe I'll ask Lava to support me there in case any of them have not been answered yet.
Yeah, thank you. There are some questions, discussion going on in the chat box. I raised a couple of questions, and probably I will start with those. The first question is to Monica. She mentioned a very important point on harmonizing sampling. Sampling is very, very important in terms of minimizing the cost and at the same time bringing out the best results. We started this work. Monica has been our team member for a long time, but there were a lot of challenges. I just asked how best we can come up with a standard sampling framework for CG germplasm, considering the diversity of the germplasm that we have. And quite often it is very difficult to get uniform number of seed samples. So is it worthwhile to have a specific working group on this aspect? And then I have one question to Dr. Ravi. He made a very important point on the limitations, or rather a gap, and the role FAO need to play in terms of filling this gap. Now the question is, we have highlighted this issue a number of times, but what action we should take to stimulate response from FAO? CG has been flagging this issue, and we have excellent in-house capacity to provide technical support to FAO initiative. Based on his experience, if he can guide us on this to take this forward, it will be very useful. I would stop there, and I have two more questions. For the other two panel members.
Okay, Lava. Yes, I think that of course it depends on the crop, on the situation, on the country, on how much investment is made in the multiplication of the material in the field, if the material is multiplied in the field, on the type of, in this sense, I mean how the management in the field can influence or can prevent the arrival of certain pathogens. According to this, in my opinion, a risk assessment can be done, and on the basis of the risk assessment, then with the good and necessary knowledge from epidemiologists and statisticians, to draw a protocol that keeps in consideration the level of risk that is possibly present, and therefore design the proper sampling procedure. Sampling is very important because really the cost of testing can be really, can change a lot. And that's why, in my opinion, it's an important issue for the methods, to have the best from the great methods that we have now in our laboratories.
Thank you. Dr. Ravi, you have comments on the FAO?
Yeah. Well, thank you, Lava. Thank you for the question. First of all, I would like to say what Michael Hailwood has mentioned about the FAO-CG agreement or the obligations to supply free germplasm, which is held in a trust to worldwide all the gene banks in the world. He made a very important point. I think that is a point where FAO needs to come forward. Because if there is an agreement that is held in a trust to be supplied free, there's an obligation, there's a legal agreement, then how to do it? Again, the whole procedure lies within FAO's premises where IPPC's secretariat is located. I think the first suggestion I will give here in terms of how to do it is to write a 1 or 2 page concept or justification on the need of what we want to do, on the scope of what we want to do, why, and that should come from the high level CG management, which is within your 1CG research and innovation strategy, where they want the policy uptake of all what you are doing. Your gene bank platform, fantastic, lot of gene banks, but to really make it strategic, make your things work globally, you really need to have the CG management coming up, playing a role, and then you approach the FAO. And initially, I believe, I may go slightly more into the operational side with my own experience. What we need is you should propose from CG a small working group to look at the feasibility or the possibility of having such a thing, whether we should have it or not. Like when you make standards, you have a small group which works out, expert group, whether this suggestion from an NPPO is right or wrong. I mean, that working group you need. So we are not within the gamut of SPS or IPPC standard committee, but you should propose a working group. You must rope in people from IPPC there who are actually the experts when it comes to transboundary pests, expert in making standards, and they are very well organized. I really salute IPPC, the contribution it has made. Otherwise, our losses globally with the exchange of pests, along with exchange of all commodities, would have been 10 times more if there would have been no IPPC. I think that is a platform with the logic of Michael Hailwood and with a small concept note and proposing a working group to explore the feasibility of it. And then you can make a time frame. If FAO agrees, yes, it is feasible, then you see how you move ahead, whether as an international guideline or best practice, or directly you should start with ISPM approach. I will personally say, don't go for ISPM right now. You will get a lot of good points on ISPM 38, which talks of international movement of seed. You take the scope from here, adapt the scope for germplasm exchange, and make best practices, because germplasm is not for trade. You will face a lot of problems if you directly go to ISPM. I think let us go step by step, take baby step now, and then gradually, if everything is fine, people accept. In the long run, maybe after 2 years, once you have an international practices or the best practices validated by all the countries or through agreements or whatever way, I think you can make a big dent in this field. And I salute you for this very good initiative you have taken with the platform you have created with all the gene banks of CGIAR. My last point here is, Dr. Lava, please don't forget the national gene banks. CGIAR gene banks are very well equipped. You have all the system. You can follow the green path. You can do everything, right from collection, characterization, evaluation. Every national gene bank cannot do. So you need to keep the system whole flexible, and it should be global. It is not within what CG wants. You have to have a scope well defined, and that we can work out. I mean, I can be involved informally with you. We can work out before you propose to FAO. You need to go in a very, very rational, strategic, and a very focused way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have one more. I would like to thank both Monica and Ravi for very nice responses. And Dr. Ravi's response already touched issues raised by Michael Hailwood and Michael Aberton also. Michael Aberton also mentioned the need for appropriate policy, which would enable germplasm distribution from CG programs. I have one question to Michael Aberton. He laid out he made very good suggestions in terms of how GHUs should be prepared, as well as what are the expectations from the user point of view, internal user point of view. And he being one of us, and he is aware of this, and he mentioned a lot of good points and highlighted the need for research on phytosanitation, which is again a highly neglected area. It's very difficult to convince donors to invest. I mean, forget about donors. Even within CGIAR, phytosanitary research is not even seen as research. We often relegate it to a kind of service unit. We have been trying, as a consequence of this platform and all coming together, we have been trying to bring these issues, get some more limelight to the GHU work. But what I would like to ask Michael is, these pressing needs that are actually constraining the germplasm movement, or the need for research to improve procedures, this demand has to come from the user end. So if there is any way you people can highlight in a bigger flora, the bigger floor, where when you're interacting with the management teams and at higher level, then it will get noticed. And then they would see that, oh, this is an area that need more investments, or this is a problematic area which is actually constraining delivery of products. So how can you help in that area?
Well, okay, Lava, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
I've had a problem with mine. I think that is happening, as you say, to some extent. At least it has to come from the demand side, and as you know, in various assessments and interactions with excellence in breeding, I think the point has come quite strongly from the breeders. You know, giving IIT as an example, cassava, yam, banana, that as they need to increase their throughput, as they need to do more in terms of multiplication, using things like semi-autotrophic hydroponics, they actually need that enhancement in terms of phytosanitation. And I think that excellence in breeding, you know, have taken that on board to an extent, but that is at the more, you know, the sort of more to do with the actual implementation and how to basically speed things up to facilitate germplasm distribution of clonal crops, both within breeding, within seed systems. As you know, a lot more interest in seed systems and how we get clean seed of yam cassava, by which I mean yam tubers, cassava stems. So I think it is happening to some extent. Now, in terms of the research, well, you and Jan and Dave Ellis and others Padara were successful in convincing Gates Foundation that was an important approach that you've taken to the use of next generation sequencing. I think we need to see follow up in terms of actually implementing that. I think to show the impact of that will be very important in encouraging them to do more in that regard. But I agree, it's going to have to be done as a sort of collective effort. And, you know, we know that there's a lot of focus even within the new structures to do with genetic gains. And I think the point needs to be made, as you say, at every level that we can make it, that also does depend on doing the research to the actual movement of germplasm, the diseases. It needs to be linked to surveillance and monitoring. It needs to be linked with things which get a higher profile, such as fall armyworm and new pests and diseases tend to get a higher profile than, you know, if you like, the work that's needed and the research that's still needed for phytosanitary aspects, germplasm distribution. But I have a question, Lava, if I may put a question myself.
Please.
To Michael Hillwood, if he's listening to what I'm saying. I want to ask about the CG. I mean, Michael, do you feel that the CG does enough or has a strong enough voice, as we should have, in the area of policy in connection with phytosanitary issues?
Difficult question.
Should I answer that now or try?
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, based on my personal experience, we're not as engaged in that fora as we have been in others, I've found, and we should be. But I see this group as and under Lava's leadership as changing that relatively quickly and increasing our engagement. I think we have tended to be, like so much of the international community and observers in civil society and farmers organizations and international research, following the access and benefit sharing ball, if you will, and not paying so much attention to phytosanitary. And I think there are historical reasons for that, but clearly that's got to change. I think my sense is this area has suffered some neglect, I guess, from us, partly because we were caught up in the CGIAR in the very early days in all the geopolitical tensions associated with, you know, the new biotechnological capacities, intellectual property rights, commercially increased participation of the commercial sector in agricultural research and development. And that led to this international tension about access and benefit sharing. And we really been very much more engaged in that than here. But I think as is clear in this session, we really need to be focusing on both sides of this coin to be able to to get germplasm moving and used in ag research.
So we need to do more within the CG.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
I would like to ask Jan to comment on the discussion on the high throughput sequencing and the questions that is coming. And Michael Aberton also raised a point. What is the relevance of accounting everything that we can detect when it comes to decisions on moving germplasm? Before you comment, I would like to inform the participants that Jan is the first scientist to publish the use of HTS for virus detection in the clonal crops. So we are talking with the pioneer here.
Thank you, Lava. Yeah, no, I mean, this is a question that from the very beginning I was struggling with because the first time we applied that technology, we immediately found several new viruses in plants that we considered healthy. And so whenever I was giving presentations, I was posing this question to people, what do we do with this information? How do we manage this? And the response was always kind of a big question mark in people's eyes. They don't know. But I think now with several years of experience, and I wrote my response also in the chat, I think we need to be quite careful when we find new virus-like sequences through high throughput sequencing, unless we have some clear indication based on our experience and on correlations that it's actually causing some pathogenicity. We should be careful to consider them as pathogens. And I've experienced with several examples where clearly there are viruses, but they are more or less present everywhere and clearly don't cause any damage whatsoever that can be detected with methods that we've employed. And probably we're going to find this more and more in the future because, I mean, viruses have been very difficult to detect in the past, and that has changed now. We've only detected them when there's been a problem and we've looked there and we've found the virus. But remember that most microorganisms that co-occur with us humans, with plants, are not pathogens. They are just there. Some of them are commensal, some of them are beneficial. And why would this be different for viruses? I mean, viruses have a benefit in keeping their hosts alive and healthy and doing well because it ensures their survival for longer as well. So I think, yeah, we need to be careful unless there's very clear evidence that your sequence that you're finding is actually a replicating virus and is causing disease. You need to do some follow-up studies before considering them as such, because we're going to find a lot of new things. And if we're going to consider everything as a pathogen, then we might end up shooting ourselves in the leg and not being able to move plant material at all anymore. So that's maybe what I would like to point out to that. On the other hand, I would like to make a reflection about this whole COVID-19 situation, and I have a feeling that this has kind of brought to the highlight and to the consciousness of people the importance of preventing the entry of pathogens, the whole issue of testing strategies, sampling, sensitivity versus rapid speed of the test, positive predictive value, negative predictive value, all these things that we are struggling with all the time. And I think it has given a new appreciation to these issues that maybe we can capitalize on to try to point out the importance of the work we are doing and the importance of all these issues, because it's very clear now in this situation, in this pandemic, how these things impact, in this case, global human health, but we can make the point to global plant health because they are exactly the same issues. I think that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you very much. So back to Mirko.
Thanks very much, Lava, and thanks very much to all the speakers, including the last interventions by Jan. I think it's been a very enlightening point on having to, somehow capitalize on the pandemic, if one can try to draw a positive lesson out of this terrible occurrence. That plant health is indeed a global issue that affects a lot of important sustainable development goals and also the lives of people. So we need to make sure that this is communicated properly in various ways. I also appreciated the reference to new technologies such as the high throughput sequencing, and how this actually has to be taken with a grain of salt sometimes, because of course new technologies will be essential to tackle phytosanitary issues, particularly contributing to diagnostics of pests and that are hosted by certain plants. However, the role of research here, and as we heard in many different aspects, will have to be kept central to inform policy and to ensure that basically research is put at the center of any policy decisions. So just in conclusion, I would like to once more get back to the rationale for having such a webinar and a series of meetings during the Phytosanitary Awareness Week. I think we kind of met the overall objective to present the importance of plant health, and specifically ensuring the distribution of germplasm, a healthy germplasm globally for food and agriculture and research and development issues. Somehow we have seen how germplasm health actually contributes in a great deal to plant health. This very initiative has been seen by many as a very key moment during the International Year of Plant Health. So we really congratulate, I would like to personally, and on behalf of the IPPC Secretariat, also congratulate the organizers for such a successful event and series of webinars that certainly will be drawing many interesting conclusions for policymakers and also for further action. I noted some of them here, but of course I'm happy to consider your further follow-up actions that may arise from further talks. But of course, I think one key message here is that we need to strengthen somehow the network between research and policy, and research and the field. So somehow the role that is typical of research is that of informing policy and supporting decisions in the field. And I think this should be further strengthened and further highlighted through events like this, but also through collaboration. I think collaboration is the other essential tool that enables us, international civil servants and researchers, to actually come up with solutions that are can be validated in different fora and can support the decisions that are made that affect the lives of many. I would like with this to thank you all, and speakers and participants, for your kind collaboration and attention. And with this, I would leave the floor maybe to Lava for his closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirko. Before I go to the closing remarks, I only need 5 minutes. I would like to ask panel members for their last closing comment, especially considering the International Day of Plant Health and all the discussions that is happening around phytosanitary issues. If you would like to make one recommendation for betterment of GHUs, what it would be? We could probably follow the same order, starting with Monica, and then Ravi, Michael Aberton, and Michael Hailwood.
There was a question by Celia that we didn't address, but it can
Please go
be
ahead. You can
now.
comment.
Yeah, I can comment now as closing. She says, how is this COVID situation impacting on our procedures and in fact, this is a problem because now most of the resources will be devoted in research and all what government has to do towards the containment of the pandemic, of course, that is affecting the human beings. But this should not put at stake the rest of the story. Otherwise, then we will end up with more problems, and it will be very difficult then to cope with new emerging pathogens or with new diseases or also for food security. Because in this moment, food security is one of the most important issues we have to take care of in this moment. And the last thing that we need is to spread more pathogens around. So I would really ask all the NPPOs to make an effort to concentrate and try to strengthen and make the best use of the personnel they have, of the resources they have, to keep on doing a very important job in surveillance and monitoring. And well, yes, and commenting on Jans, yes, what he just said, this is another very important point. Let's be realistic. With the new techniques, we can see all sorts of things in plants now. So just make sure that we have still that part of plant pathology, which is the traditional plant pathology, where we still take care of pathogenicity test and just to be real. Otherwise, we can take a path that will take us to a very difficult situation in terms of trades, in terms of exchange, in terms of food security.
Thank you. Dr. Ravi?
Yeah, I have a one-liner. Global awareness on pest-free germplasm exchange by going green, by utilizing the green pass concept.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your support, and we consider you as a champion to push this through the intergovernmental agencies. Thanks a lot. I hope Michael Aberton is still online. I know he has another important appointment at 3 o'clock. Michael? Okay, maybe I will ask Michael Halewood.
Sure. Yeah, closer integration of all of our efforts on access and benefit sharing with all of our efforts on germplasm health. And I think, that can start from operations within CG centers, but also all the way up to the top, where you've got the secretariats of the IPC and the Secretariat of Plant Treaty, for example, cooperating. And I think that's happening already, but I think we clearly need to do more up and down the line.
Thank you very much. So now I will just go to the last aspect of today, that is conclusions. I'll share my screen. I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah.
This is 1 hour. We wish we had this session much longer time, but in this 1 hour we have fantastic discussion. The first thing we learned is sampling issue. This is something which we have been working upon, but Monica made very strong suggestions on the benefits of having a harmonized plan. It may not be possible that only one plan can be established considering the crop diversity that we have in CG, but definitely there can be 2-3 standardized sampling approaches that might help. And this is also in line with our having a harmonized protocols across all GHUs. So we have been working on it, but rather slowly. Maybe we take this as an impetus and create a working group to fast track this particular aspect. Dr. Ravi mentioned about the need for best guidelines. ISPM, not now, because the way germplasm has been positioned and the links between ISPM and the WTO. So it may not be feasible to have an ISPM, but as a first step, it is important to have best guidelines. And this is something that has to be driven by FAO through an international consortium. So this is something that we will follow up with a working group, and we continue to ask Ravi to be our ambassador to champion this cause. And Michael Aberton, who is our internal person with a lot of experience dealing with GHUs, and he's also head of excellence in breeding. So he has a dual crop of understanding the needs of both breeding programs and gene banks. And he laid out very important recommendations with regard to how GHUs need to focus for the future. And he stressed on the more research to address some of the bottlenecks, better protocols for efficiency and cost effectiveness, and also create more internal awareness about the work that we are doing and the obligations that centers have, so that there is better awareness, and as a consequence, there will be more importance to GHU work. Michael Hellwood mentioned about SMTA, ABS, CG obligations, and one thing that occurred to me while he was making his comments was SMTA already listed a standard statement for the quality of the material with regard to the phytosanitary issues. But unfortunately, there is no instrument to implement this. Maybe we could use as it is as a cue, like there is something which is already etched as part of the SMTA, but then there is a complementary aspects are not adequately addressed by FAO and plant treaty. That could be our entry point to justify the actions that we are proposing. So this is something that aligns with the views expressed by Ravi Khetrapal as well. So this is something that we had to follow up. And all the speakers and also Merco made very strong comment on the national capacity development, gene banks and NPPOs, and the need for greater collaboration between the various organizations, international, regional, and national partnerships are key. We have been doing it, but there is more scope for more room for improvement there. And ultimately, more needs to be done. Yes, we have done a lot. Michael made a point that we need to do more, especially with regard to the policy and all these green pass concepts that we are talking about. So we probably have to need to create a internal group to deal with it. With that, I would like to thank the panel members for taking their time, contributing their valuable time on a weekend and a Friday, and all the whys that you shared. I mean, it is impossible to get this kind of inputs in a short time, but you made terrific commentary, and we are going to bring out a report because we have been recording all of this. And we will share it with you with a clear synthesis and recommendations. And also like to thank participants throughout all the 5 days. We have 3 different media through which this being telecasted. One is Zoom, and then YouTube and Facebook. We have reasonably good participants representing all parts of the world. Your contributions made the difference, including the comments that are coming through the chat box. And ultimately to the GHU team, this is the team that made this event possible. I am just a steward and chauffeur, but it is a team contribution, and we have a fantastic team who are committed to the cause, and they're doing everything they can to deliver the best from our business. And I would also like to thank the background team. These events like this don't happen easily. We'd like to acknowledge communication units of all the CGIAR centers who have been promoting this event and for making all the arrangements. And more specifically, I would like to thank IITA communication team led by Kathy Lopez, who is the head of the communication group, Ajay Tunde, and our ICT unit, our information technology unit led by Fakunle Inca, and Wogunya Busayo, who is the lead for managing the Zoom communication. So we thank you, all these people. And I acknowledge GeneBank platform, which contributed funding for this event, the support that we get from GeneBank managers, we call them as A15 group, and also from the breeders, CRP breeding programs, who are important contributors to GHUs, the crop trust which manages the GeneBank platform, and our own GHU teams, not only just heads, but the entire team that contributes to the functional GHUs. please do follow the social media pages, because we are going to post all the video recordings and the blogs that are coming out from these webinars. And we'll also share presentation copies along with the program through the web page and social media. So with that, we come to the end of the meeting. We are just almost on time. It is on my computer, it is showing 2:59. So we are on dot. So I would like to thank Mirko, especially for anchoring this event. Your participation made a big difference. So we convey our profound gratitude for taking time to host our panel discussion. And also special thanks to all the panel members for the passion and your support to GHU work. So maybe if everybody is there, they can open the cameras and we'll try to see your pictures, those who are still hanging around. And I will ask our IT team if they can take a screenshot if possible. So please open your cameras. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lava.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirko.
Yeah,
Thank you, everyone.
we will be chasing you. Some of you, we will be coming back with action points. And also those participants, you have now made connections with the CG group. Do continue to interact with them. If you have any questions, please do contact them. We'll be as helpful as possible. And Monica, nice to see you once again in our GHU family.
It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Lava. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a great day and great weekend. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Oh, Marisa, you joined.
I'm fine.
Despite
Here
being
is
on
the
break.
vacation.